On a quiet street in Atlanta stood a mansion with a black wrought iron fence. The house was large, but it didn't stand out. White walls, dark roof, 2 stories. But it was behind those walls that hid a secret that few people knew about. Malik Richardson had lived here for 6 years. He was polite, calm, and always helped the neighbors, fixed cars, changed oil for the old people for free. Everyone knew Malik was a good man. But no one knew that every morning he had breakfast, not with one woman, but with 4. All 4 were his wives. And they all knew it. He is 36 years old, fit, wears white t-shirts and leather jackets, and his dark eyes know how to convince without words. Malik is ex-military. After his service, he opened his own workshop and got rich. But money is not the main thing in his life. He believes in order, family, and his own strange principles. And each of his wives is different. Aisha is the older one, strong as a rock. Jada is silent and smart. Tamika is cheerful and bold. And Kiara is the youngest and dreamy. They live in the same house, follow strict rules, and everything is held together by the Maliks. But what happens when one of the pillars of this strange harmony cracks? Malik didn't always dream of having 4 wives. It all started 10 years ago, when he returned from military service in Afghanistan. He was a different man, silent, reserved, waking up at night in a cold sweat. That's when he met Aisha. She was a psychologist at a military hospital. Strict, determined, she quickly realized that underneath Malik's armor was a wounded soul. They grew closer and were soon married. Aisha helped him recover, but over the years, Malik began to change. He wanted more. Understanding, gentleness, serenity. That's how Jada came into his life. Quiet, observant, a librarian. She didn't argue, she didn't push. She was just there, like a shadow. Aisha felt it first. But instead of conflict, she kept her emotions in check. Malik honestly admitted that he loved both of them. And, strangely enough, they agreed to live together. Aisha respected honesty. Jada respected harmony. And so began their strange union. But it was only the second round. Fate was already preparing a 3rd meeting, with Tamika. And she was the complete opposite of both women. Tamika came into Malik's life like a hurricane. She danced at the local club. But she wasn't a dancer in the usual sense. She led dance classes for girls, teaching them to be confident. Her energy was infectious. Malik couldn't look away. Tamika knew what she wanted, and she wanted Malik. Aisha met her with restraint, Jada anxiously. But Tamika, like the elements, didn't ask for permission. She just came and stayed. She spoke. "I'm staying out of your way, but he's mine too." Malik was torn. Aisha and Jada, mind and soul. Tamika, fire and passion. It was chaos at first. They fought, they argued. Tamika asserted boundaries. But then there was a strange balance between the women. Aisha made the rules. Jada became the mediator, and Tamika. She learned to listen for the first time. Malik watched each of them change, adjusting to keep this alliance going. He was scared, but he found something real in this strange triangle. There was another shock ahead of them, though, a 4th. Her name was Noelle. She appeared as if from another world, quiet, almost ethereal. Malik saw her at the bus stop. Barefoot, in a white dress, her hair gray, her face calm, her eyes like depths. He approached, not knowing why. She simply said, "I felt you coming." Noelle was a healer, working with the elderly, healing with touch and word. She lived by the river, in a little wooden house, with cats and books. Time slowed down with her. Aisha became alert. Jada felt something familiar. Tamika couldn't figure it out. Noelle didn't argue, didn't impose. She just was. And everyone sensed she was carrying something important, something inevitable. Malik didn't plan to fall in love. But with her, he felt no passion, only calm. It was new, deep, scary. One day she said, "You must choose, but not just one, but your whole heart." And he realized he couldn't be the same, because love is different. And this house was no longer the same. When Noelle entered their home, everything changed. For the first time, each of the women felt not a struggle, but a question. Can I be in this space without losing myself? Aisha said they needed a clear division of responsibilities. Jada, that they needed a common goal. Tamika was still hesitant, but began to listen. Noelle, on the other hand, wasn't demanding anything. She was just there, in the silence, among the books, in the corner where everyone who felt bad sat down. She didn't speak, she felt. Malik began to change. He got up earlier, quieter, more attentive. He was no longer in a hurry. He was different with each one, and suddenly realized that these different versions were not masks, but himself. He began to put the house together. Not walls, but rules. Evenings when everyone gathered to talk. Quiet breakfasts, open doors to bedrooms. Not chaos, but order with elements of freedom. And in this strange union, there was suddenly a sense of the whole. Unusual, but alive. No longer just a man with 4 women. He was the center of a house where each was part of a larger we. Living in harmony doesn't mean tension-free. The first blow came when Malik stayed overnight at Jada's and forgot to stop by for breakfast with Tamika in the morning. She was silent all day. Then, threw his shirt out the window. Aisha came up later, with a cold face. "You must realize that balance is not the same." He nodded, but didn't fully understand. Noelle didn't say anything, just brought Malik some warm tea and sat down next to him. He realized, not everything is cured by words. Conversations began. Sharp, awkward, painful. Jada once shouted, "I don't want silence. I want to be heard." It was difficult. Everyone wore masks, wives, lovers, spiritual companions. But who were they really? Malik began to ask. "Speak if it hurts, scream if you are scared. I will stay." And one day they began to speak. Not always calmly, but sincere. The house began to grow, cracks inside. But it's from the cracks that the roots grow. Because trust is not a result, it's a journey. After one of the conversations, Aisha said, "We should tell each other our real stories, not for romance, but so we don't build illusions." They gathered in a circle, no makeup, no phones, no protection. Aisha started first. Her voice shook, but she spoke. About her parents' divorce, about her stepfather who said, "Men don't need strong women." About how she survived by building walls. Jada admitted to being homeless at 19, living in a car and singing on the subway. That confidence is not her strong suit, but she wants to learn. Tamika talked about abusive relationships and how she felt guilty about her strength for a long time, and how, for the first time around them, she's not afraid to be gentle. Noelle didn't say a word. Then pulled out a photo, an old one, black and white, of nuns. "This is my mother." Everyone was silent. She didn't say more. But everyone understood. She had wounds, too. And Malik looked at them and knew. He too must speak. Not as a hero, but as a human being. He took out his old notebook and began to read. They listened. After a night of revelations, something had changed in the house. They were no longer trying to be perfect. Instead, they were real. The laughter became lighter. The silence became warm. Not everything was smooth, but it became livelier. Malik began to alternate evenings, not according to a schedule, but according to how it felt. It was hard for Aisha. She liked order, but she learned to let go. Jada rejoiced at the spontaneity. She even suggested a day of dancing. In the kitchen, to old soul records, they moved as best they could. Tamika, previously stiff, laughed for the first time in a long time. Jada pulled her into the dance, and the room filled with light. Even Noelle was dancing, quietly, almost imperceptibly. Malik stood in the doorway and looked at them, as if seeing them for the first time. Different, strong, vulnerable. He smiled. He realized, love is not a pattern. It is a flow. The record changed to a slow ballad. He walked up to each one and danced a little, without words. And suddenly, he was afraid to lose it all. But he showed no fear, only held Jada's hand tighter as the ballad faded. One day, Malik came home later than usual. His cell phone was dead. He had no warning. The house was tense. Jada sat by the window, smoking. Aisha was cleaning nervously and silently. Tamika stared at the floor with her arms crossed. Noelle stood in the kitchen looking at the clock. When he walked in, everyone was silent. He felt the air grow heavy. "Where have you been?" Aisha asked, without a shout. But her voice trembled. Malik was taken aback. He did not think that an ordinary evening would cause so much pain. He explained. He was late with his brother, helping with work. But the words sounded weak. Disbelief slid across the room like a shadow. "We're not just your emotions, we're people," Jada said quietly. The phrase hit him deeper than a scream. He realized, love isn't just about the highlights. It's also about responsibility. They talked for a long time that night. No hard feelings, but with truth. Each spoke out what he was afraid of. And Malik promised to be more honest, not just in his words, but in his actions. He didn't want to be a god in their lives. He wanted to be the man they didn't have to fear losing. A few days passed. The house was quiet again, but in a different way. It was not resentment, more like inner reflection. Each of them was processing what had been said. Malik, too. He was more attentive, noticing little things. The way Aisha adjusted her glasses when she was worried. The way Tamika ran her fingers through a strand of hair when she was sad. He started listening more than talking. Noelle surprised him. One day, she laid her head on his shoulder and just sat like that, silent. It was a whole act for her. Malik knew how closed it was. He didn't move, even breathed cautiously. Jada beckoned him to go for a walk in the park. Without a word, she held his hand. The branches of the trees swayed in time with her breathing. She was silent, but her fingers gripped his tightly. Later, he cooked dinner himself. "Surprised them," Aisha cried, unable to hold back, not from the taste, but from the gesture. For the first time, he wasn't just there, he was involved. This week hadn't brought passions, but it had brought something more important. A silence that healed, respect, and a reciprocity in which there is love, even if the word love is not spoken. One night, there was a great thunderstorm. The thunder was so loud that the walls shook. The house full of women suddenly became quiet, as if waiting for something. Malik woke up and realized he wasn't alone. Noelle was already sitting by the bedside, hugging her knees. She had been afraid of thunder since childhood. Aisha came into the room and lay next to him, just silently, snuggled up against him. Tamika stood in the doorway, as if hesitant to enter. Malik gestured for her, and she came over. Jada was the last one in. She entered in silence, blanket in hand, and covered everyone. They lay side by side like a family. "I always felt alone when the storm started," Noelle whispered. Malik took her palm. He didn't know what to say, but he knew he needed to be there for her. Through the thunderclaps, he heard breathing. A steady, calm one. These women are his family. Not a toy, not a concept, not an ideal, but real, living people with feelings. He no longer felt like a man down on his luck. He felt like a man who had been entrusted with the most fragile of things, love. One morning, there was a knock at the house. Malik opened the door and saw a man in an overcoat. It was Aisha's father. He stood there, looking stern, distrustful. Aisha came out first. Her face turned pale. "Daddy?" Her voice trembled. The man walked inside, looked at Malik, then at the other women. He was silent, but his silence was like a judgment. He sat down in a chair. "I raised my daughter differently," he said. Aisha wanted to reply, but Malik stood up. "Let me explain," he began, but the man held up his hand. "I'm not going to listen to you," he said coldly, "but I look at my daughter and I see that she is glowing. I don't understand it, but I see it." At that moment Aisha did not hold back. She stood up in front of him. "Daddy, I'm an adult, and I'm a happy one." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled for the first time. Barely. "Take care of her," he said to Malik, and then he turned and walked away, leaving behind a long silence. It was a challenge, but Malik passed it, not with words, but with the way he looked at Aisha, with a respect that couldn't be faked. Jada left the house more and more often. She became silent. Malik noticed it, but he didn't press her. He knew, if you love someone, you have to let them go their own way. One night, she came home late, face tired, eyes full of heavy thoughts. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. Malik nodded. They sat down in the kitchen. Jada began slowly. "I thought I could let things go, but there's a pain inside me that you don't know about. There was a man before you. He broke me." Malik was silent. Only his eyes were full of understanding. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to," he said softly, but she continued. "I was afraid to trust, but now I'm afraid of losing. You are different. With you, there's a silence inside. I don't know how to love right, Malik. I'm just afraid I'll lose everything again." He took her hand. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. I chose you, and I won't change my mind." She didn't cry, but there was gratitude in her gaze, the kind that comes not from words, but from finally being seen. After talking to Malik, Jada seemed to come alive. She was no longer hiding in the shadows, but living in the house as part of the family. Everyone noticed this, especially Selena. Selena was the oldest of the wives, and her sense of order was ironclad. She was used to keeping everything under control, including herself. But now she felt anxious. Not because of jealousy, but because of uncertainty. One morning at breakfast, Selena said, "I'm glad Jada is smiling, but we must be honest with each other. If someone is suffering, you can't keep silent." Those words hung in the air. Athena nodded demurely. Camila hesitated. And Jada looked at them for the first time, without fear. Malik looked at everyone and said, "You are my soul, but only if it is not torn. We all need to be together, not just in the house, but in the heart." And then something important happened. Jada stood up and walked over to each one. She hugged them, gently, sincerely. Even Selena responded. It was a step, one of many yet to come. But it was the beginning of their real family. Athena was always the most reserved. Her beauty was like marble, cold, precise. But in her eyes there was a lot of unspoken meaning. One evening, when everyone had gone to their rooms, Malik found her on the balcony. She was sitting wrapped in a plaid and looking up at the sky. "You're often alone," he said quietly. She didn't turn her head. "Sometimes it's easier for me. I'm used to being self-sufficient. He sat down next to her. But self-sufficient doesn't mean being alone, especially with a family. Athena sighed. I'm afraid of becoming redundant. You're all so alive, so real, and I feel like I'm made of glass. Beautiful, but useless. Malik looked at her carefully. You are the most attentive of all. You don't talk. You observe. And you notice things that elude others. She was silent, but something flashed in her eyes that Malik saw for the first time, uncertainty and weakness. And at the same time, a willingness to open up. I don't know how to be soft, she whispered. I'll help you, he said, and just put his arms around her. In the morning, Athena behaved differently, quieter, calmer. For the first time, she made breakfast by herself, without any helpers. Malik noticed that her movements had become softer. Jeanette was surprised to see toast and fruit on the table. You made this yourself? Just felt like it, Athena replied with a faint smile. They sat down together. The atmosphere was almost domestic. For the first time, there was no tension between the women. Malik walked into the kitchen and froze. His 3 wives were laughing. Athena looked at him quietly, and there was a shadow of relief on her face. Perhaps for the first time in a long time, she felt part of something real. Around noon, Malik found an old letter in the mailbox. On yellow paper, in a handwriting he knew. It was his mother's handwriting. He knew at once that it was something important. The letter was in a thick envelope with no return address. His heart pounded in his chest. He went upstairs, locked the door to the study, and opened it. Inside were several pages. His mother wrote that she knew of his difficult choices, about wives. She warned, "Many will judge you, but your soul must remain pure." Malik reread the lines in which his mother talked about her own unhappy marriage and how she lacked respect, honesty, and love. The letter was almost a confession. He laid the letter on the table. It felt heavy in his chest, but clear. Everything he did had to come from the heart, not for the sake of outward form, but for the truth between people. He walked out of the study. For the first time in a long time he felt that he was on his own path, and perhaps his mother, even after her death, was helping him to stay on it. The next day, Lauryn met Malik in the hallway. She stood with her hands clasped to her chest, eyes full of anxiety. "We need to talk alone," she whispered. They stepped out onto the terrace. The wind fluttered her hair, and Malik remained silent, sensing that the conversation was not going to be an easy one. Lauryn looked away, then straight into his eyes. "I met my ex, by chance." He froze. Her voice trembled. "He showed up out of the blue, said he'd changed, asked me to start over. I didn't respond. I just walked away, but I couldn't help but tell you." Malik stared at her, trying to understand. Why did she tell? Out of a sense of duty? Or because she was beginning to truly value what they were building? "Thank you for telling the truth," he said quietly. She exhaled in relief. He took her hand, and in that moment a spark ran between them that hadn't been there before. When they returned to the house, Athena and Jeanette saw Lauryn snuggling up to him, not out of passion, but out of trust. And that changed the atmosphere. They developed something more than jealousy. Athena saw everything. She wasn't used to losing. In the past, a successful lawyer who knew how to win in the courtroom and in life. But now, everything was changing. For the first time, she felt control slipping away. She went to her room and took a long look in the mirror. Behind the strong woman hid a vulnerable one, someone who was afraid of being unwanted, one who still hadn't learned how to be soft without feeling weak. The next morning she came to Malik's house with a cup of coffee. He was surprised. She had never made such gestures before. "I don't want to play," she said. "I don't want to prove I'm better than anyone else." Malik fell silent, then smiled. "I never asked to be better. It's important to me that you be yourself." Athena lowered her eyes, then said quietly, "I don't know how to ask, Malik, but I'm asking now. Don't let me go. Don't make a choice. Just accept us all as we are." He walked over to her, put his arm around her shoulders. No words, just a hug. Outside, the house was still the same, but inside, an invisible work was happening. The masks were falling away, and true intimacy was being born. The house became quieter, but it was not the silence of reticence, but the silence of understanding. The women did not become friends, but they no longer fought. Each found respect for the other. Jeanette now joked with Lauryn, helped Athena in the kitchen. Sometimes the three of them would have movie night, even if Malik was busy. It was no longer a battle for attention. It was a space in which each could breathe. Malik sat in the backyard, watching the sunset. There were 4 chairs next to each other. Jeanette came out first, bright as always, in her anime print pajamas. Then Athena, in a light dress and a book in her hand. Lauryn, with a plaid blanket, which she threw over everyone's shoulders. Jada was the last to approach, quietly but confidently. They sat down next to each other without needing words. Each found his own place, next to each other, not in front or behind. Malik turned to them and said, "I don't know what will happen next, but I do know one thing. You have made a man out of me, a man who has finally realized what love is." And everything fell into place.